Hey folks, Steve here with another Dark Summer video. We're going to be looking at turn 2 in this video, which would be the third week of June. And got to call out a few corrections from the last video into this one. Now, the funny thing is, I did catch a lot of my errors in the last video as I went, or shortly after I, recorded it. I explained it in the same video. There were still a few things that I missed. One, which I realized right away once I was finished recording, was that this guy does not suffer attrition on turns 1 and 2. So this guy still sits there. He can't really do anything, but he is out there. There was a combat that I had done with units that had already come ashore that would have allowed the elimination or the proper elimination of a strong point that I screwed up. Kind of small potatoes, doesn't matter a whole lot in the big scheme of things. One thing that was pointed out to me, and this came from Ted himself, my comment about getting out to here from the beach in the first turn, saying you don't have enough movement points to get over there, I am incorrect. I didn't really pay enough attention to these causeway hex sides that are over here. So if you look at the map on your own, I'm not going to zoom in right this second to show it, but there are these causeways. And in fact, the terrain effects chart actually does say that you treat that movement across a causeway as if you're paying the cost to enter clear terrain. So ultimately, that's my bad. The example of play does work and is accurate. I just screwed up. So that's bad on me. What else? I think that's mostly the corrections I want to call out. In terms of strategy, Ted had pointed out that I took a big risk in doing my reaction chits the way that I did as the Germans. I still think on the numbers and on the odds, it was fine, because even if the American chits had come up, it's not like they were going to be able to exploit around here, which is what I was really worried about. I had a higher chance of pulling a German chit than the one, movement chit for the British, right? So it was a calculated risk, and it paid off okay. Maybe it was too much risk and wasn't necessarily needed, but ultimately, I think it worked out okay. So, what are we going to do now? Well, we're going to do turn 2. And so I need to get that underway. We're going to do a few things this turn that we didn't do last time, like drawing randomly for our weather. So we're going to go to the weather cup, and we're going to draw our first weather chit. Now, you can see there's a lot of stuff in here. Could be any number of things. Now, there is an optional rule that allows you to play slightly more historically, where you sort of fudge what can be pulled from the cup on the first so many turns. I'm really not as worried about that. I mean, I'm willing to let that be a little off the rails and have some kooky weather stuff. But again, whatever we pull from the cup will stay out of the cup, and we'll put it actually on the turn track to show what the weather progression was. So we're going to go ahead and pull the chit, and we'll see what we get. Okay, I pull. It is cloudy weather. Cloud. So we'll go ahead and put that on the turn track. And what does that mean from a gameplay standpoint? Well, it's nothing good for the Germans, I'll tell you that. This is really quite bad. Our player aid sheet helps summarize what these things are going to look like. So German units may not use road MP costs except for reinforcements. That's going to slow down the Germans quite a bit, actually. Allies can declare prepared offensive in some combat rounds. I've got to talk about that here in a minute. Allied defenders receive 1 column to the left shift for air power, so that's not air assets that we use. It's just a blanket ability across the whole game map. Allied defenders get a left shift, which is probably going to make it that the Germans really can't counterattack at all in many cases. Allied carpet bombing is allowed twice per game for each marker. Each allied tactical air marker may be used once per allied combat or combined action round. Um, so we'll see what that looks like. Naval support is available, which is all fine and dandy from our perspective. And there you go. So those are the primary things we need to worry about, and ultimately, we should expect that this is a good turn for the Allies. Will continue to be a good turn for them as they go. Now, a couple of things I'm going to throw out right here so that we can talk about it a little bit. There are these two chits. There's an American set and there is a British set. Prepared offensive can be used in the first combat. I think it's the first combat chit that a faction has, and it basically allows them to get another shift to the right. There might be a few other benefits, so that's something that we can do on starting on turn 2. It wasn't available on turn 1, and it has to be sun or cloud weather, and it is. So the Allies can definitely do a prepared offensive if they want to when the time comes. And then we also have the combined action chit, which basically allows us to turn one of our chits, either move or combat, into a, everybody can move. Basically, it's basically one hex. There's some nuance to that with roads, but you can move a hex and attack with one column shift to the left, so it's not as good of an attack. So it's an option. It's like a flexible thing where, if the Germans are getting a little cheeky by retreating one hex all the time, the Allies can do this and try to punish them for it, though the attack will not be as good. So this is very circumstantial when we choose to use this. It is used in tandem with the action shit, drawn, not replacing it, and both the British and the Americans can do it. So we'll need to figure out when is the most appropriate time to make use of that. I won't know right away until we get to it. But there you go. And then we're going to consult the replacements table to see the number and type of replacements received this turn. First, the Allied player and the German player spends replacements to bring reduced units back up to full strength. So this is a sun cloud, which means that the United States gets 2 mech and 1 infantry. The British get 1 armor, 1 infantry, 1 Canadian reinforcement. The Canadian can be used for any Canadian unit. There is a handy dandy little chart here that tells you what you can spend it on. Sorry, the focus is not there. So basically, the US can spend mech on the combat command or on armored cavalry, and blah, 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 blah. This is all pretty straightforward stuff. It's not surprising. It's good to have the chart just to make sure, but pretty straightforward, I would think. Now, the funny thing is, when you look at the replacements chart, ultimately, for pretty much every case, the Allies tend to get more mechanized or armor replacements than any other type, which is usually which feels like it should be like in other games, maybe the inverse, right? Maybe you get a lot of infantry, but armor is hard to replace. And here, just due to the mechanization and motorization of the Allies, they just have a lot of tanks. It's harder to replace infantry because of the training and the manpower or whatever, I guess is maybe one way to look at it, where they can bring some more tanks on, sure. That's not the problem. It's getting good quality fighting soldiers to integrate with your existing units that is the harder thing to do in terms of replacements. It's just very interesting to see that nuance and figuring out how that is going to work. The Germans it's a little bit different, but ultimately for the Allies, they just get more. So I think there were some cases where I could have chosen to take mechanized step losses, and instead I took infantry. Maybe that was a mistake, I guess, in hindsight, and I should focus on, if I got to take a step loss, it might be okay, as long as it's still a 2-step unit to take a step loss on the mech or armor or whatever. I'm going to put a cut here, and I'm just going to go and do the replacements. I'll kind of talk about where I put them in a minute, and then we will take a look at the action phase and figure out what's what. I also need to double check the rules to see, do we get to put our asset markers for this turn? Are they available now, or do we have to wait for reinforcements? I got to look that up myself, so I'll be right back. Okay, so in looking at the rules, I am reasonably confident because the asset markers in the rule book are referred to as coming in as reinforcements, that they don't count as formations, but you don't get the asset markers until your first move chit where you would get reinforcements. Because there's not a distinct reinforcements phase. That seems to be the way that is supposed to work. Now, if that is not the case, I think there might be some errata or clarification needed to say that those asset markers become available, immediately at the beginning of the action phase or something like that. But otherwise, for the allies, for instance, to get their action, or to get their assets, they have to use a move marker, which certainly incentivizes right now the allies to use a move chit as their initiative chit. And in fact, just thinking about it, I think the British would really like to use theirs to try to flank around the city and maybe try to get over, in a better way, get over the Horn River. So that's probably what's going to happen. Now, in terms of the replacements, the Americans kind of had some wastage. They could only spend one mech replacement. They lost the other one because there's nothing else to replace. For infantry, they flipped this guy to full strength so that he can just be safer pushing down south. These guys are a bit beat up over here, but I think that's okay for now. The British were able to use their armor replacement, which I used back here on the guy on the beach that was beat up. And then we used an infantry replacement here just to ensure that these guys are in good shape as they look to make that flanking maneuver. The one Canadian step that we got, I actually could not use because they were full up. So I definitely, I didn't know that the next turn was going to be a cloud turn. And I know there will be some sun turns, but it does incentivize us trying to use the Canadians, get them bloodied, so we at least get the replacement point that won't get wasted. So I'll need to think about that when it comes to combats, the combats to come. The Germans, by the way, didn't get any replacements, so they're kind of screwed. Anyway, and just to speak really quickly to those asset markers that we do get or will get this turn, I'll just throw it up on the camera. The Americans get tank destroyers, which throw in some combat factors, always a nice little bump. And then we have the carpet bombing, which, the 8th Air Force and the Bomber Command, which can be used twice per game. It gives us a shift, which is nice, but there's always the potential that it could be overkill, it may not be needed. Historically, they carpet bombed the city here, and that didn't necessarily have the effect that they would have wanted, as good an effect as they would have wanted. So I don't know that we're going to use these in this turn right away. The tank destroyers we might, or probably will, as the Americans at some point. The bomber commands, or rather the carpet bombing, I'm just not sure when that will be most valuable, but I guess we'll figure it out. So that brings us to the action phase. Now, what we have to do is, again, look at the action chit availability chart. And we see for Cloud, the US gets 4 movement in combat. The British get 2 move, 2 combat. And the Germans will get 3 move combat and 2 reaction. I have to double check the restriction on what things can be. The Germans must choose 2 move and 1 combat. They get their reaction chits. And basically the US is going to have 2 move or 2 combat. They can't have more than 2 move or 2 combat. So that's probably just going to be the way that works out for the US. But yeah, so the U.S. gets a lot of chits. The British, the British get an okay number, actually. It's not bad. They just have to figure out how they're going to use it. So I think the first thing we'll probably just end up saying straight out of the bat is I think I want to use the first initiative chit to be a British move, so that the British can actually um, go and quickly uh, try to outflank the defenders. They might not be able to get may not be able to get super far, but I'd like to make it a really difficult situation for the Germans for sure, so that even their reaction is weakened. Um, and I'll have to load up the cup otherwise. So what I'll do off camera here is I will load up the cup with the available chits for each side, knowing that we've got our move chit as the initiative chit. And then I will go ahead and conduct the British move, and we come back. When we come back, we'll see what the situation looks like. Okay, so here's the situation after the British move. Now keep in mind that when we played the British move, what that means is that they get their first batch of reinforcements. And so the British actually rolled pretty good. They rolled a 4, which allowed them to bring in the rest of their turn 1 reinforcements and a chunk of their turn 2 reinforcements, actually. And so they managed to get a lot onto the board relatively quickly. And so what I have here is this guy just sort of holding the line, making sure the Germans can't sneak in here and close a beach. We did begin moving units across the Orne River where we had some space and sort of getting some guys moved around to continue to hold over the river line, as well as units that have entered as reinforcements kind of came through here and moved across the river. And I need to kind of think about this for a second, because Zocs do not project across major rivers. And so I have to wonder, could these guys get even further than they did? They started here, did 1, 2, 3. Uh-oh. Germans might be in real trouble. I need to think through this for a second. 1, 2, 3, and then across the river like so. They are infantry. They can do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. So 7 to get here, let's say, and then 8, 9. So they could have a very weak hold over, but all these guys would be knocked out of supply. And even if these guys, I guess these guys could try to rush forward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half. They could try to put these guys back in supply that way. Or they could try to attack 14, a 6, 2 to 1. They could probably bust out of this. So it's like, do we try? You could see, I mean, I actually pushed out other places, right? We came over here. We're still locking this down. We managed to move through here and make use of this major road to actually be pushing even further south, outflanking the Germans quite a bit, actually. But is it worth it to try oh, yeah, this is tough. This is tough. Very difficult decision here. Because no matter what the Germans do, like, all this flak that's coming up the road isn't going to be able to attack. They could restore a supply line with the German reaction, but that would really be it. Um, Otherwise, it's one of these guys trying to make some sort of breakthrough. They could move to get here and restore the supply line and attempt to make some sort of attack. Hmm. We can't move directly from one enemy Zoc to another enemy Zoc, so they would be. Oh man, this is tricky. So they would try to attack 27 to 6, but cut in half because they're out of supply. So it would be 2-1 odds. 2-1 odds, but across a river. That's tricky, man. Then it would be 1-1. But if the Germans manage to get a retreat, then they break open. So I don't know. This is a tough call. I think I'm going to go ahead and have the Allies go ahead and do that. The fact that the Zocs don't project over the major river is what's really important. It allows these guys 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9 movement points, and I mean, technically this guy could go like 10 or something, but I think taking the city here is what's really important. Oh yeah, well yeah, and if they try to attack here, it's over a major river, and it's actually a city, so that would make it very difficult actually for the Germans to break out of there. So I think that's the right move. I should have thought through that a little bit more, and now I'm just spending 6 minutes talking about this move. I think this is a very major deal that I pulled this off. And as the Germans, I probably should have done a better job. I guess, one, knowing that the Allies were going to get to go first, that they could do something very powerful like this, and that even with the even with the German reaction, like there's just not that much more we could do to try to fix the situation. The best that we could do with the German reaction would be to restore supply to these guys, and I think we really need to try to do that. I don't know any other way to get them out of the situation, so I think that's it. That's the British move. I think the Germans have to spend one of their reactions right now and try to restore supply to those guys and hope that they get a combat ship or something to be able to attack over here and knock these guys loose or something, right? Like that, to me, that's like the only way I can think of to fix this situation with as bad as it really is right now. So yeah, we're gonna activate this. We're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 5.5, basically. And that will restore a supply line. But if the British get to move again, then they'll wrap around here, and that'll be that very quickly. So yeah, wow, that's the bit. And they can't really attack, mind you. They have a 0 attack factor, so that's like, I don't know. This is kind of a bad situation. Like, should I even bother doing this? I think I got to try, because I think the Germans could go, like, there's enough German ships in the cup that they could do something and hit back and try to break open and try to get out of the city. I think that would be the best thing they could try to do. So we're gonna go to the cup. We're gonna pull what's next and hope for the best. I guess for either side, right? That's what we need to do. So pull the next chit, and the next chit is German combat or move. Well, I certainly think a German combat right now to try to get out of Khan is Khan. Heard it both ways. To try to get out of here, but they can't do a multiple hex attack. What they need to do is do like a 1-to-1 type of attack. So it would be 27 to 6. That's 4-to-1. Um, 4-to-1, and then you lose three shifts. It becomes a 1-to-1. But I think that's worth a shot to try to solve this problem. All they need is a retreat. Yeah, wow, tricky stuff here. Yeah, 1-to-1. I think we got to try it as the Germans. I can think about other attacks after this, but I think it's really important that um, we try to make this work and get out of there. So, yeah, 1-to-1 attack. It's 3 shifts, by the way, because the city is 2, and then the major river is 1 also. And I don't think the road allows us to ignore uh, the river. I think we still have to deal with the river, if I remember right. Yeah, major road or minor road says other terrain. So all that together is 3 shifts from 4-to-1 to 1-to-1. We just need a 4 or higher, and I rolled a 6. So DR star, which means, let's see, does the city let us do anything else special? No, only the Germans get the special thing. So they're going to take a step loss, and they will have to retreat, 1, 2, basically. And then to advance after combat, I think we do that. And that's the one combat that we could do. Then otherwise, I think it is just really difficult. 15, 12 to 15 doesn't work. Yeah, most of these other combats don't really work for the Germans. There's not a lot that they could try to do. A lot of it's like 1-to-1 or 1-to-2s, and I just don't see where that can help the Allies make any headway around here. I mean, they're just on the strategic defensive, so it's like, can they counterattack? They're not going to be able to counterattack with much. Usually at very poor odds. So, yeah, I think that's it for the German combat shit. 1 combat, but that is intended to open up the path. Now, what could happen is if the British get a move action, they're going to go, around and seal all of these guys up, and that was the only German combat shit I think that we could do this turn. So it's going to be really hard for the Germans to, depending on how these cups go, the Germans really need a movement shit next. So going to the cup, we'll see what we get. And I pull, oh, there you go. Well, there it is. German movement is up. So I think I'm going to, I think these guys are going to be trying to like pull on all the way out of here as best they can. I might have to do some emergency withdrawals with some of them, but they are going to extricate themselves and try to get set up on the ridge line. But the British are basically going to get, they're going to get the city, and the British are over the river. So I think it's just a matter of, where can the Germans try to set up that is a coherent defensive place. But I think the British are doing pretty good, all things considered, for that. So I'll take care of the German movement, and then we'll come back. Okay, so here we are after the German move, and I hope I fixed things you guys didn't realize, but off camera, I had made some pretty major mistakes. I had done a lot of movement, and I forgot that the Germans can't use road movement on a cloud turn, and so I had done a lot of movement that I couldn't do, and I actually had to watch my previous clip to try to get things back and then move appropriately. But I think everything on the board is legal. There were some emergency withdrawals that I had to do, and I believe that's legal in this game. I better make sure of that too. Yeah, emergency withdrawal. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, should be good. So we did that. We did have German reinforcements, but they rolled very poorly. I rolled a 1, and so they got 2 formations, which was basically the rest of their turn 1. They were able to close a gap over here, where the tip of my tweezers are, and forceps. And this guy's trying to come out around to figure out a way to react to where else the Commonwealth forces are going to advance. The Germans are trying to pull back, maintain something of alignment. They don't really have any options. So it's kind of a tough gig just to stay in good shape. Over here, the Cotentin Peninsula situation is just going to be getting worse. We don't have enough forces over here to really like reinforce this area. So trying to pull these guys up, but because they can't use road movement right now, they can't get up there really to plug the hole in the gap. So really, all the Allies need to do to isolate the peninsula is to go right over here and isolate the peninsula, and then we get into grinding out Cherbourg. So I think the Allies are doing pretty well so far. It's kind of hard to tell like what are the best things to do. Holding on to the city of Caen is not really worthwhile because, well, we kept the Allies from getting a victory point for capturing the city, for having any part of the city for that matter. But now we can start to pull back, and it's just going to matter how far can the Allies get with their moves and their actions before the Germans can do something. So it's kind of where things stand. But again, Germans don't have a lot they can really do. I mean, they lucked out, right? They had a reaction shit. They got their combat. They were able to kind of escape from the clutches of the Allied encirclement and have been able to move a little bit to try to salvage the situation. But man, that cloud weather just really hurts their ability to move and to do stuff. I will point out that, by the way, the Germans now have some support markers. That comes in the form of the Nebelwerfer, rocket artillery, which can be used on attack or defense, and then this assault gun, which is optional, but I have chosen to use it because, well, why not? We'll give the Germans a little bit of help since they're going to get beat up so bad. Just gives the German player at least a little bit of, I don't know, flexibility in what they can do in their turn, rather than just get smacked around the whole game, which is kind of what's happening right now. Okay, so we're going to go back to the cup and we'll see what we get. And we pull the British combat marker, which there's really not a whole lot for the British to do with that combat marker. To be honest, they could make it a prepared offensive, but I don't really know what good that will do us. I mean, we might as well do it. Let me see if I can find the rule on that. Of course, I can't find it. Can't find it when I need it. Of course. The one time that I need this. So what I believe it's a column shift to the right, I believe, and I think in this case there's no reason not to do it. Oh right, it's weirdly placed in the rules. On sun and cloud turns, the Allied player may launch up to 2 prepared offensives, 1 US and 1 British. Can only be launched in each allies' first combat round of the turn. Well, this would be the first British combat round. 1 column shift to the right for all attacks that round. This represents the effect of massive artillery support. And the reality is, based on our cloud weather, this is our first one, so we either use it or lose it, and we might as well use it. I mean, there's no reason not to. So we would put the prepared offensive chit on it. Can't save it for a later one. It has to be the first one, so it's just, we might as well do it. But is it going to actually get us anything? Where all can we attack? Well, we can attack over here, and this would give us, let's see, that's 8, 14 to 3, 14 to 3. It's pretty good, right? It's 4 to 1. I say we just roll 4 to 1 and see. Well, 4 to 1 shifted to 5 to 1. So 5 to 1, we got a 4 is a defender eliminated. So a member of the 700th and 11th Infantry is destroyed on the German side, and we'll get to advance after combat. We will do that like so, which also puts this guy out of supply as it happens. Here to here, I think we will do, that would be 4 to 2, but I think what I'll do is I'll throw in the naval support. The weather is okay, and this is a clear hex within the naval gun line. So that gives us 6. So that's 10 to 2 is 5 to 1, or shift to the right is 6 to 1, which you almost don't need a roll for it, but we do eliminate this unit. Member of the 326. And we can advance after combat. But you know what? I don't know. There's actually a way for him to get cut out of supply, so we will not advance after combat. We'll just let that be as is, which is still pretty darn good. And then, let's see, we could do 16 to 6. Yeah, 16 to 6 is just 2 to 1. We'd be attacking a town, which is 1 shift, back to another shift. I don't really know if that does much for us, if it's worth it. Yeah, let's roll it and just see what happens. Of course, we get a BL1, so step loss, and we'll take a step loss. Okay, I think that's it for the British combat round. I mean, we eliminated some Germans, and we're starting to open up the front, so I think that was all good. I guess what I should have done in some of these cases was thrown in the support markers that I sort of just forgot about, even though I just talked about them. I guess it might not have mattered that much. If I had used them, I would have thrown in 4. Yeah, that might have caused some step losses for the British, but I forgot, so it's gonna have to be. Let's have to move on, I guess. So already, I'll say, I think just from the play and the fact that I got so anxious to roll the dice that I forgot about the German support marker, that I'm playing very poorly as the Germans. Yeah, that sucks. But inevitably, when playing a solo game, like, you're just going to play, you can try to play the best of your ability. Odds are you may just play one side better than the other, and that's what happens. So now this would be a time for a potential reaction marker, but here's the thing. if I use up my reaction marker, the Americans haven't gone at all yet. They haven't gone at all. So it's like, we need to save some German reaction for that. So we'll go back to the cup and we'll see what we get. And we get British move. So what's remarkable about this is you can see it was British move, German, 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 British, British. How unlikely that is. Very unlikely. But ultimately, that's what you get with chit pull. So, man, a really British-centric first half of the turn. So the British get to move. I do think they will want to do that. And so I will take care of the moves, and we will see where we get when we come back. Okay, here we are after the British move. You can see we're kind of getting to the point where we're going to brush up against the American line, but we're really going to be trying to sweep out through here. You can see this Canadian armor, which is pretty far out from the rest of the Canadians at the moment, has now occupied this town that is across the river and is kind of holding a bridgehead over the river. So we're crossing the Orne down here, making a mad dash to secure the bridge, and we're pushing out of here. So the idea being, we're going to disrupt this sector, be able to continue to push out from here, and just kind of make it untenable to operate on that ridge. But the Germans still have the ability to kind of hold. They probably will get their own chit here soon. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm going to go to the cup. I'm not going to use reaction yet again. The Germans need to hold on to reaction for a little bit longer because they have to be able to react to what happens with the Americans somehow. So pulling the next chit, and it is American movement or combat. I think in this case we probably want to do movement. And we'll go ahead and roll for reinforcements. We rolled a 4. I'm not sure how many formations we're really talking about here. I think there's a good number. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's convenient. Okay, so there's 5 formations that could come in. We rolled a 4, so we get all but 1. We have to bring in the first turns first. That means a couple of mechanized cavalry battalions, or I'm sorry, regiments. And then the other divisions are honestly all very similar, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm going to bring on the reinforcements, which is these guys. And then I will do movement. So we'll check that out here, and we'll come back after that move in just a second. Okay, here we are after the American move, and you can see, the pressure is on. This guy over here is still out of supply. We are pushing down into the bocage. We are putting pressure all along the German line, and in fact, we have actually created a circumstance where I'm pretty certain we've isolated the Cotentin Peninsula. Now that doesn't, for game purposes, that doesn't affect until the end of a German action round. And so the question is, can the Germans, or will the Germans choose to do a reaction here? I think the answer is no. It's still early, and they only have 1 more left, that they're hoping that they can draw their next chit. But, I don't know what they could do to actually salvage the situation. They can't save the Cotentin Peninsula. So soon, everyone's going to go hide in Cherbourg, which at least puts a lot of forces, in there to defend it. and then the Americans continue to push through here. I really don't have a good sense of like, am I, on in terms of the timetable, how am I doing here? Because over here it's all kinds of wackiness. So it's interesting. But knowing that the game's only 10 turns long, I guess we're off to a pretty good start. So um, that's kind of important here. The reinforcements really helped seal the deal because this guy could get, the guy down here could be a little tricky and he's maneuvered down here. And then the reinforcements could help seal that, again, with units and Zocs that were cutting off the peninsula. So I think we'll go ahead and go to the cup and see what comes out. German reaction just not looking like they can do a whole lot right now, but we'll see what comes up. And we did get the German move or combat, and I guess this has to be a movement. So we lucked out as the Germans. I'm trying to figure out, this isolation happens. You check the status of Cherbourg at the start of every German action round. It's the start of the next German action round. Okay. Interesting. You check the status of Cherbourg at the start of every German action round until Cherbourg is captured. The reverse, So we do have a marker that is Cherbourg is isolated. We have a marker for that. On the opposite side is Cherbourg captured, but we have Cherbourg isolated. So we can place it sort of near the Cherbourg box. We'll just put it right up there. And let's see. The isolation of Cherbourg has the following effects. All German units that are out of supply but can trace a continuous path of hexes of any length free of allied units and non-negated allied Zocs. Well, actually, I should make sure. Yeah, okay, so that would be the case. Okay. You got to make sure the Zocs are going to matter. Regiment combat. Yeah, that's a regiment, mechanized regiment. Okay, so yeah, that is all. The Zocs are all there to isolate the peninsula. Okay, so okay, so basically what's going to happen, and it's going to get a little busy around here, this guy goes to Cherbourg, this guy goes to Cherbourg, these two guys also go, this guy goes, this guy goes, these guys go. So ultimately we have a whole lot of guys hanging out in Cherbourg, and the Allies can work their way into that space, but for the moment, that's all we can really do. So that kind of takes care of a lot of the potential German movement. Otherwise, I will do the rest off camera and we'll see what the end result is. Okay, here we are with the German move. We brought on more reinforcements. We were able to create a really funky looking line. You can kind of see it starts over here, which is very loose, to kind of where these guys are coming up slowly, and then all through here. The reinforcements can still use road movement, so that allowed them to kind of get up farther. And then it really came down to, these units kind of fanning out and kind of just, again, trying to slow down the British. They came away from the river line of the Orne, but if they didn't, it just increased the likelihood that they would be outflanked and surrounded. So we're trying to make it more difficult to operate here. I think the Germans would really have liked to kind of cut this guy out of sorts, but we can't quite do it. I do think it's a good thing for the British that they got that bridge over the river. But, at this point, it's just going to mean, at this point, I think the British are doing very well. I think ultimately they're doing better than historical in large part, again, because I left that one hex over the river unattended as the Germans, and that just allowed the British to threaten the encirclement of Caen much earlier than historical, I think. And so that just the British are doing well there. That much I think I can say for certain. But yeah, the Germans are feeling bad right now. But there's something like almost it must be close to like 50 defense factors in Cherbourg right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens up there with the action. And in fact, I kind of have to be careful because at some point we need to look at within the next few turns. We need to look at taking the airborne units off the map. So I don't want to lose those units, and I do want to be able to pull them off the map. So I don't want to send them into the meat grinder that will probably be Cherbourg, because as I look at the Cherbourg combat table, all of them are highly attritional if you actually read what the results are. And so I really do not want to put those guys at risk. Now, there's a whole thing that no unit may be eliminated until all friendly involved two-step units have been reduced. So if you take a bunch of step losses, you can kind of avoid whole units being eliminated. But I still don't think that we can really count on those U.S. Rangers and paratroopers getting hurt too badly. I mean, we really just need to avoid that. They can take a step loss, I guess. They are allowed to have a step loss, but I just got to be careful of that as the Allies. So, okay. Well, the German move is complete. So far, it's all been a struggle. This guy could not emergency withdraw because any move would put him adjacent to an allied unit, and I'm pretty sure that means that he cannot do that. So we'll go ahead and go to the cup. We'll see what comes out. The German moves are all done at this point, so it's just the one option is the reaction marker, and that's it. We pull the British combat chit. Now, this has kind of worked out for the Germans because they've been able to avoid really being up against a lot of these guys. So I think we're going to go ahead and just do the combats off camera. I'll show you guys the aftermath. Whoa, hey, looks something a little bit different than last time, right? Well, that's because I used our combined action chit. So this being the last British chit, there's no reason not to. This allows us to basically do a one hex move with most units, and basically, or I guess this guy could have moved here. That's what I would do. Either one hex or two hexes if using road movement. And it basically meant that I didn't attack anybody actually on my combat round, but I got a free hex of movement, which is just convenient because it allows us to kind of get up in the German's face, to advance a little bit across the board with every unit, and just kind of, again, presses the advantage a little bit for the Allies. So they are fully across the Orne River. That's all well and good for them. Oh, actually, not everybody could actually cross the river because the crossing would not have allowed it. Oh, right. Well, I just do that. There we go. He could have crossed there. Everywhere else was a legal move. Yeah, there we go. We're all set. Okay, I had to watch out because that one hex of movement, you still got to watch out for the major rivers where the mechanized units can't cross there. So the little change up potentially put somebody at risk down here. But we'll see how that goes. There is a lot of firepower in this German unit right here, but if they want to go toe to toe with the British, they can go ahead and do that and just bleed off step losses basically. But yeah, so I think the British are doing okay, but the Americans really haven't gotten to do much, so it's going to be up to them at this point now. Is there anything that the German player wants to do? I don't think he wants to react yet. I think he's still waiting for all the American stuff to kind of shake out. So we'll pull the next chit. And it is a American mover combat. I think in this case we kind of need to do movement as the Americans. And so I will take care of that off camera. I think there's going to be some decision making to be made about coming onto the Cherbourg, the Cherbourg box. What do we put in there versus not, and all of that. We'll figure it out. So we'll be right back. Okay, here we are after the American movement. So you can see we've sort of started to pull off units that were stuck up here to bring down. We still have the isolation of of the peninsula, so that is still just the case. We have one guy lagging behind due to movement, but we do have a bunch of American units in the Cherbourg box. Kind of just lined them up here, and I have to imagine, I don't know what these two OSS battalion markers are, but I have to imagine that the combat factors are really close to being 1-to-1, which really means that it could be a very highly attritional series of combats that could end up occurring here. So we'll see how this goes. I think what the Americans really need to do is try to get in here, resolve this, shut this down, and then come down, because at some point I need to get rid of these airborne units, and they're really comprising of the majority of this flank here. So there's a little bit of a challenge. I've got to kind of decide how I want to deal with this. Maybe I'm not playing well. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. Okay. Oh, and I guess we do have. Yeah, we actually do have some reinforcements that I should have brought on. So this would be the rest of the American reinforcements. Let's see. Can we actually get up here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, actually we will, and these reinforcements will simply go right into the Cherbourg box. So all eyes on Cherbourg here as the Allies want to seal that up. Now, right now, what can the Germans do? Right now, not a whole lot. The only thing they could maybe try to do no, they just don't have the movement to do it. They just don't have the movement to do it. Thought they could try to sneak up here and actually break the isolation of the Cotentin Peninsula, but they don't have the movement to get up there. They would have to move, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's not enough to do it. Yeah, boy, they just can't make it. I mean, I think the Germans will wait, and let's just see what happens. Pulling to the next chit, it almost doesn't really matter because it's just the American stuff. So, yeah, here we go. Combat. I do not believe a prepared offensive affects the Cherbourg combat table. There are no column shifts. Okay, so we're gonna do the combat, and I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and have this be a prepared offensive for the Allies, or for the Americans. This is the first American combat round of the turn, pretty late in the turn. Okay, so let me figure out the Cherbourg combat stuff. Okay, so here we are with the Cherbourg stuff. So if we do Cherbourg combat, I'll go ahead and reveal these guys. Okay, interesting. One is a 0 value. So what is our strength? We have 4, 10, 12, 14, 17. Oh, no, I'm counting the wrong factors. Dang it. Defensive factors, right? 5, 8, 12, 14, 16, 21, 33, 38, 42, 47, 51. 51, that's a lot of factors, right? Like that's a fair number of combat factors. Yeah. Let's see if there's anything else. Okay. So then if we calculate the Americans' attack factors, we have 9, 3, 9, 15, 21, 27, 37, 47, 53, 59, 65, 71, 77, 83. Well, 83 to 51. 83 to 51. That's still 1-1 odds. So I don't think, we really get clear of anything here. It's going to be attritional no matter what we roll. And so I will roll a die and we will see what we get. I mean, ultimately, if the Allies roll a 6, that would be profound and would be the preferred path. So what do we get? Okay, we got a 6. Okay. Wow. All right. You say, hey, it hit some of my counters that I had over here, and that's why it went funny. But a roll is a roll. And a toll is a toll. And I don't get no toll, I don't get no roll. So that is a Germans eliminated. The U.S. loses 1 die roll's worth of steps, but never less than 3. So this is amazing. Absolutely. I think I must be playing the Germans very badly, like shockingly badly, for all this to be happening. Now, granted, that was a 1 in 6 chance that I rolled a 6, but it happened. So I'm trying to trying to figure out. I'm getting my butt kicked as the Germans, like absolutely just annihilated. It feels like so pretty hardcore. So what is going to happen here? Well, okay, eliminated. I'm just kind of shuffling them off to my dead piles, and then I have a different set of dead piles by division, organized by division. So this entire division eliminated. 243 gone. We've got some of these little guys. They're not a big deal. The garrison, which is very strong and actually could have held out, eliminated. 709. And then this unit from the 91st. Okay. Well, that is catastrophic, and Cherbourg is captured. Now we captured Cherbourg on turn 2. That is worth 5 Allied victory points. So victory points are now at 6 to, I think, 0. Yeesh. And so then we are going to, the U.S. loses 1 die rolls worth of steps, never less than 3. We'll roll for that. Okay, so we're going to lose 3 step losses, and I think it makes sense to kind of separate that across divisions a little bit. So we'll do it on the one step loss across all the infantry divisions. This goes back to maybe I should be taking step losses on the armor, since it's easier to get armor back, but I feel like I lose less combat factors by doing that. So this, it's funny, like, okay, we cleaned up Cherbourg, right? Now the rest of these units can come out of Cherbourg and just start sailing south, because these strongholds aren't going to move. They're eventually just going to go away at the end of turn 3, and all of these guys will be able to replace all the paratroopers that we're going to pull out to avoid losing victory points, and then these guys are just going to sail on down towards the Brittany box, overwhelming the Germans. So, I mean, the Germans are going to get more reinforcements, that's for sure, but I think right now, just the great weather has just meant that they're just beating the heck out of the Germans like crazy, which, I mean, that's a good thing, I guess. Generally and objectively speaking. So, okay, let me do the rest of the combats, which I'll just do off camera over here, and then I'll show the aftermath on camera when we're done. Okay, here we are after the rest of the combats. We actually ended up eliminating several German units, knocking them out. And I mean, you can see it's looking very sparse over here. I think now is going to be the time where, I mean, what's funny is like the support markers didn't help at all. I guess technically I should have these guys flipped over, but it really didn't help at all, because I rolled 6s on several of these combats, and it's like, I don't know. It's a tough call. So I think now's the German reaction shit kind of has to, and I think they're going to do the paratrooper division here, and I think the intention is just going to be to try to move back a little bit and hope that's enough just to pull back, just to get away. And this guy's screwed, but there's nothing we can really do to stop that. So just make it so that the Americans really can't do a whole lot. And so that means that uh, the final chit, which is going to be American combat, I think they're going to use this as their combined chit as well. And, they'll move everybody, one hex. And so I wonder if I'm allowed to move guys out of Cherbourg. I mean, the main thing is going to be, these guys move down, this guy moves down. I think these guys move down, moves down, moves down, moves down. Stuff like that. Like, it doesn't really do much to change what's fundamentally happening. I guess it doesn't really matter if Cherbourg becomes unisolated now, because it really truly doesn't matter. I wonder if let's see. Yeah, I don't know what to think about. What's interesting is like we took Cherbourg and like it looks like we can just leave immediately, which I don't know if that's realistic or not. Like it's sort of hard to say how to interpret some of this stuff. Um, yeah, like I don't see anything that says we can't come out, and we can use our one bit of movement to come through here. So I think we would certainly do that. Um, yeah, I might even say, yeah. I mean, I think you guys can't really see that. Yeah, we've left the Cherbourg box. So we went and kicked Cherbourg's ass, and now we're back onto the map with a combined action of one hex movement, and we're ready to rock and roll. Now, so it's like, okay, you got to remember that this is all the American activity for the whole week. We spent the week cutting off the peninsula. The Germans retreated. We advanced further off map to the actual city of Cherbourg, and via just an overwhelming assault, the Germans gave up and surrendered, um, and enjoy, I guess, being prisoners of war of the Allies as opposed to the Soviets, which I think it's probably, if you're a German soldier, whether you knew it or not, you probably would have wanted to be captured by the Allies. So um, that's an okay situation for those guys then. So I think The only thing remaining is, do we want to do any attacks? And I think it might be worthwhile to do 14 to 3. That's 4 to 1 odds, but then that would get reduced to 1 to 1 odds. Maybe we don't attack at all anywhere, because even this combat is a little goofy. He'll still be in supply, but I don't think the Americans can really attack anywhere and have it go reasonably well. I mean, we could try to bleed the Germans, but I think in the present situation, 1-1 odds, I mean, what does that really do? If we advance after combat, that doesn't do much for us. BL would maybe help. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, 14 to 3, that's 4 to 1. We lose 2 because of the bocage. And then we lose 1 for it being a combined action, so we'd be down to 1 to 1. And the Germans can ignore DR results. So yeah, there's really no reason to attack even there, unless we wanted to take a step loss, and I'm not quite prepared to do that. So I think that's it. I think that's the end of the present turn. So this is probably a very long video, but there you go. Check for supply. As far as I can see, everyone on the map is in supply. Those strong points that are left that are technically out of supply, well, at the moment, actually, some of these are in supply just based on tracing rules, because there's a little bit of a gap right here that the German units could use, but doesn't really matter. So those strong points technically are good to go, but they would have anyway. The strong points would only go away during the attrition phase of turn 3. Cleanup phase, nothing to do there. We'll clean up the chits in preparation for the next video. Victory phase. So we counted the 5 victory points for the Allies capturing Cherbourg on turn 2. We do not have anything else that really matters for the Germans. They really don't have any victory points. So right now it's 6 victory points for the Allies, 0 for the Germans, and it is going to be really hard to figure out, how do the Germans make this up, because the Allies still have a number of ways to get victory points. They are not going to, I don't think they're feeling the need to keep their battalion, or their, not battalion, their paratroopers or gliders on the map. They're probably going to want to pull those off within the next couple of turns, and not give any victory points to the Germans for that. They're not going to lose any units. They're not going to sacrifice victory points for being on the map or whatever. They will make a clean transition now that the forces that took Cherbourg, relatively bloodlessly, are going to come and reinforce the west flank here. The American right flank heading down towards Franchet down in the south with a pretty clear road at the moment. The Germans are going to have to figure out a way to stop that, but time is ticking for them at the moment. They still have, you can see, a decent number of reinforcements that are going to be coming in over time, but it's going to be a question of, will they come in time? Will they come in time to actually make a difference, or will the Allies overrun their position? So, we're well on our way through the game, guys. I do think that I'm playing poorly as the Germans. I can't get around that right now. It's kind of hard to see how I make things better. There's just a lot of weakness on the board. Where the Germans can concentrate firepower, they just do not have enough superiority to make a counterattack work, and the distances that they need to travel is so tough. They can't use road movement right now during normal movement, so they just can't get anywhere. They just can't get anywhere to make a difference. And so I suspect there's going to be some strong units coming on as reinforcements soon, but the Allies are still getting plenty themselves, and they're just going to be in better shape here. So I think the weather may determine what happens next. If we get another good sunny weather turn, the Germans are going to be in really rough shape. If they can get a storm turn in, that might give them an opportunity to kind of solidify something or figure out, where they can go, next. But okay, guys, well, that's turn two. Pretty action-packed filled turn, to be honest. A lot of crazy stuff going on. We'll look at turn three in the next video. So we're about 1/5 the way through the game already. Hope you enjoyed this. Sorry if it's really long, but if you stuck the way through and you caught my Men in Tights joke reference, then good on you. And we'll see you in the next one, guys. So take care. Keep on gaming.